Your employees and your customers and the regulators and everybody is always watching. So what you do matters. There's always a downside. And think about it. Analyze it inside and out. Okay, if I do A, B, and C, what could go right? What could go wrong? Go to your professionals, go to your accountant or however your financials work. Talk to an attorney or somebody with legal expertise who's going to tell you where your exposure lies, where problems can happen.
Welcome to Movified Wednesdays. Let's go. Welcome to Movified Wednesdays.
Welcome back to Movified. I'm your host, Mark Hirschi, owner of Salmons and Ellis Moving and Storage, located in beautiful Vancouver, British Columbia. And it is Movified Wednesdays. Little drum roll. You know it, people. I can't do this without my co-host, my best friend, Stephen Verade with Big League Movers out in Memphis, Tennessee. On Deck Deliveries. And, of course, Ready Rolls.
.com, where you can get a virtual assistant today. You can get an interview in the next couple of days.
Yes, you can. I like it. You know what? Today, Patrick Mayerbock is joining us. He's been on the show before. Patrick works directly with operators in this industry. He's helped structure Stevens, trust and protect his businesses and family. I mean, it doesn't get better than this. I'm really happy to have you on the show, Patrick. Welcome back.
Well, thank you. Always a pleasure. It's always, always good getting back together with old friends and in the greater community of the moving world. I love it.
It's also nice to talk to you not that we don't, but it's nice to talk to you in a I'm in a legal spot advice, Talk to the old movie industry, right? Yeah.
Well, I always say, like, you always want like a good business banker in your pocket. You want always a good lawyer in the back of your pocket that you're kind of like, hey, can you answer this? I know my lawyer here. I'm always like, can I just get your direct cell phone number? Like, I just have a quick question. Just one quick question. One quick question. I ran into a friend of mine who's a lawyer as well too in business. And we were doing backpack buddies. We were helping kids with on the weekends fill up backpacks full of food and everything else. And I'd probably say for like an hour and a half, I was just biting off his ear. I was just like, hey, so this or that, like how, but then actually the funny time is I was actually telling him, I was like, I have a friend of mine who's a lawyer out in like Chicago area. He deals with transportation law. I'm like, can we like do something? Like, this is a great niche market. Like, how do we make this work? It's fantastic. Look, today's pre-trip is brought to you by Movified Masterminds, where operators sharpen decisions before expansion. Because once you're over 5 million, once you pick up past 3, mistakes get really expensive. And we're going to be talking about that, especially today. So join the community, be part of the mastermind group. We have groups like 4 and 5 already trying to kick off. We're looking for certain individuals. We are hand selecting you. So make sure you go check out movifiednation.com. Check out the mastermind page, fill out that quick form, let us get back to you, and we'd love to have you be part of the group.
Dude, I love being a part and jumping in where Mark lets me jump in where I can. I like being a part of all the groups, but I gotta always rep Group 1. Shout out to Group 1.
Shout out to Group 1. It's been going on for a year now, and the amount of value that we've learned from it, it's been phenomenal. Right? There's one thing to be going to conferences and talking to each other. There's another thing to have like-minded individuals. We're all on the same path, and we all have different answers to a lot of the same topics that we're bringing up. So it's moderated, it's topic-driven, and we're looking already for guest spots like Patrick, to join us on an episode where we can add additional value. And you also get a bunch of SOPs, right? Like, this podcast is created to almost build out SOPs for you to elevate your business from only doing a couple hundred thousand to doing a couple million in business. So definitely don't want to miss out on that.
And this one I'm passionate about, this particular episode, because it's not about paperwork. It's not about SOPs per se. But this is about everything you're working for. This is about protecting your family and future. Like, I didn't even know I needed this until getting a relationship with Patrick. I didn't know how much I could have lost until talking and working with Patrick. So I'm excited about this episode today to go over a SOP on protecting yourself in a lot of ways.
Patrick, before we kick it off, one of the biggest things is that we like to talk about before we kick off the show is the moving mindset. Make sure to grab your copy on Amazon.com or .ca. It's called The Moving Mindset. It is your daily devotional and journal. We are on day 70, I believe, depending on like how we got it. Yeah, the big green book. And it's really, it's always funny, when we have a guest on here, me and Steven always kind of do a wild guess on what day we're supposed to be at when the episodes come out. And again, we look at it going, God works in mysterious ways. He really, you look at this day and how fitting is it for this episode, which is correct privately, celebrate publicly. Love always protects. 1 Corinthians 13:7. How you handle correction and celebration sends a powerful message. When you correct people publicly and only celebrate privately, you create fear. When you do this in reverse and correct privately and celebrate publicly, you actually build trust. My challenge to everybody today is if you need to correct today, do it privately. If you need something worthy of praise, celebrate it in front of others. Think of what do my patterns of correction and celebration teach my team? How are we actually doing this on a day-to-day?
And yeah, I'll just share what that means to me is it's a good reminder of we lead a lot of men in this industry, and men are prideful, right? And so when you correct people in front of other men, it's taken differently than when you do it respectfully and privately. And Patrick, what do you think about today's devotion?
I love it. I mean, you guys are. I mean, I'm getting goosebumps because one of the, and just to put it quite candid, one of my favorite things in the legal industry counseling movers is we have a lot of Christian clients, and it's amazing because so often, like you just said, I mean, this is a perfect topic for today, but so often you turn to Scripture for the right legal analysis, and it goes hand in hand. So I mean, you guys are speaking my language right there, and the fact that what you're talking about, leading men. Just to put it quite frankly, it's not the easiest to be a true man in the biblical sense nowadays. So people like yourselves, I think it's outstanding for young movers or movers who are in a questionable state. Just they don't know where to go with it or what to do with it or what direction. I think examples like yourselves are vital because at the end of the day, it allows some of those the students of the game to stand on the shoulder of giants. And the fact that you guys hold values behind what you teach and what you talk about and what you profess here. I mean, you got a fan in me because I'll tell you what, tonight, you mark my words, that book is going to be ordered. I'm going to make the
Moving Mindset, Amazon.com by our own author, Mark here.
I appreciate, but I always find it at times, it really can be in any industry, but it's so easy to lose your cool, especially in this industry when you're dealing with customers all the time. You're dealing with guys that just, we had a morning huddle this morning with my office staff, and in a perfect example, we had someone that was taking an extended longer trip vacation. They went to go visit family. They were gone for 4 weeks. They were supposed to be back here on Monday. On the weekend, you get an email saying, hey, listen, I actually have to extend my trip for another 3 more weeks. So now it's 7 weeks gone on a vital position within our company. And so the conversation with everybody was just like when you're dispatching movers, there is a domino effect. There's a domino effect when you have a busy month end or a busy day. One guy calls in, I can't make it in. They don't realize that there was 2 other guys that thought the same thing. Oh, don't worry about it. It's just me. They can fill this spot. And this massive domino effect kicks in where you now have all these different spots to fill. When you're in the office, it's the same thing. And I know we're already going off topic, Patrick, but when you look at when you're hiring someone out and you try and have these stipulations where you say, okay, it's a manager approval, you're only getting your vacation time on here. what is like, is there a fine stipulation that you can try and tie in that's not going to have it where they want to come back at you and go, oh, you owe me severance, show me this, show me that, especially when you come back and you go, sorry, like I have to fill your position. Like you've taken all these extended holidays and periods, not that it's a paid holiday, but your position, like, you know, do you recommend having it written in saying if you need a long period, you actually have to quit and then reapply?
And here's the thing, and that's a great question. I could say there's one overarching piece of advice that applies to everybody, geographically, size of company, it doesn't matter, is consistency. You have to ensure consistency. Now that sounds great, okay, I can be consistent, but truly it gets down to the value set that you employ in your company. Everybody has a different way of doing things, but you have to make sure that you're cognizant, first of all, of what your rules, what your guidelines, what your expectations are. So going back to the consistency end, you know, some people, depending on their setup, are a little bit more, you know, they're more rigid than others for various reasons. You know, labor pools might be more difficult. Others may be a little bit more lax just because that's what they value in their kind of their culture. But the one thing, you know, me personally, I'm kind of on the, I don't know, on the mid to the less lax end. But what you do is you take that value set, you communicate it outright, okay? And you're very clear with every single one of your employees across the board. And then in your enforcement, you're consistent with that. So you might have a guy you like better than another one, but at the end of the day, remember, your employees and your customers and the regulators and everybody is always watching. So what you do matters. Goes well to what you said, the lesson today about, you know, celebrate publicly, but, you know, to deal with some of these issues more privately. People watch. And, you know, the one thing I can say is make sure your employees are accountable, but at the same time, don't be afraid to celebrate them and give that midline consistency across the board.
Before we ever started using a moving CRM, someone asked me, could you 10x what you're doing right now with the current systems and processes you have in place? And I said no. And so he was like, well, then you need to just pull the trigger on the software. And then I saw Smart Moving and it was game over.
Austin joined thousands of moving owners on Smart Moving in 2021. Since then, he's more than doubled his business.
And I always compare Smart Moving to Apple products. It's just so simple, so easy to use. And that's really what's allowed my team to scale and now have 2 branches. And last year we scaled Central Coast Moving over 50% growth.
If you're ready to turn your moving company into a machine that drives profit, not chaos, try Smart Moving.
Hey everyone, Matty Mailers here, the guy who pioneered handwritten letters for the moving industry. Why? Because my competition at my moving company was using the same stock postcards as me, and my mailing company didn't care. So I created a better way. Here's some mind-blowing results in July. Miracle Movers Utah closed $93,000 using our handwritten letter strategy. With our campaigns, you can forget about the guessing games. You get a trackable phone number, daily photo proof, an incredible design team, and I'm also included. All letters stop at me for approval before they ever leave our facility. Right now, Movified listeners get 1,000 golden tickets stuffed in our genuine handwritten letters completely free. Plus, I'm going to throw in bulk realtor data for up to 5 counties. What are you waiting for? Moving Letters AI. Stop competing, start dominating.
Love it. Okay, thank you for that. I appreciate that. I specifically did that actually this morning in the meeting where we were talking about how much time everybody's working and saying, look, like if you need other tasks, we will find them. Like lots of stuff to do. Patrick, what's the most common way movers can lose everything?
It's a great, I mean,
Mark's a heavy hitter. Go straight to it.
Yeah. Let's go right
Let's
to it.
go, baby. Let's go.
Well, back in the Mayerbock household when I was growing up, and I'd do something stupid. Like one time I hit my brother in the face with a baseball bat. I'd get varying degrees of that punishment, and my dad would just look at me with this stern look and just say, "Think, Patrick." Well, at the end of the day, like truly, that's the most simple lesson is think. Because anytime you undertake whatever it may be in the moving industry, whether it be you're hiring somebody new, or you're creating a new department, or you're getting into a different location, or you're taking out a loan. We talked about that briefly before, just the idea of financing. Actually take the time to think. Because anytime there's an idea that's worth pursuing and worth taking into consideration, there's always a downside. And there's no uniform checklist for every single person, because these businesses vary across the board. But the one thing I can say is think about it. Take that idea, analyze it inside and out. Okay, if I do A, B, and C, what could go right? What could go wrong? Okay, if I think the cost-benefit analysis warrants more thoughts on it, now go to your professionals, go to your accountant, or however your financials work. Talk to somebody in that sphere. Talk to an attorney or somebody with legal expertise who's going to tell you where your exposure lies, where problems can have. Is this cost benefit worth it? At the end of the day, it really comes down to that process of thinking and actually taking the time to do your diligence. Because I can tell you, when you start that process of peeling apart a problem or a concept or an idea, you're going to find it's like an onion, and it gets miserable. I was talking with a buddy of mine today. When I go on my heavy document, I'm just going nuts. It's coffee and those like little nicotine packages. I keep both industries keep them both in business. But the reason for that is because I find this problem and then I peel it back. Oh no, there's another problem. No, there's another regulation. There's this. The other thing is be organized with it. Okay, well, I'm going to have a regulation issue here. Does that also correlate to an issue in, say, anything, practical, the financing end, things like that? It all relates. But sit down, think, analyze it, actually write out and organize your thoughts, cost-benefit analysis, and then seek professional guidance. At the end of the day,
what happens if you don't grow the next year, right? Before you sign that lease or that next big financial obligation, right? Is it often do you see that as hey, hold on, think about that?
Oh yeah.
What happens if you're not going to be the same as you were this year on the same pace, right?
And I think that also comes with lots of
lease
renewals as well too, right?
Oh,
lease renewal
100%.
comes up, it's jumping up a couple more dollars per square foot, and you think, it's not even that bad, and you don't actually do the proper numbers. What am I going to have to look to increase? Is my storage clients ready to take on, a 20-30% increase on their storage bills as well too? And is that something that I can get away with, and am I going to lose a bunch of customers because of it? So
Patrick, have you seen someone lose their warehouse?
Oh yeah. Oh, absolutely. And actually, Mark brought up a good pre-show comment about personal guarantees. And I'm as an attorney, obviously, I'm very anti-personal guarantee. And I would say the majority. I won't go into majority, but I would say a significant number of moving companies, there's no need for a personal guarantee. I have actually a friend of both of yours that I'm working with right now, and he just expanded, went to a different area, and is doing very well. The thing is, what people don't realize is the landlords and their agents are going to send a form lease that just automatically includes a personal guarantee. And people think, whatever. I like the finances. I've negotiated the TI, whatever it may be. I'm just going to sign whatever. And it's a big mistake, especially for a company who doesn't need to. They have an imprint. You have to think about it down the line. What if it goes bad? It goes south. Well, at the end of the day, going back to your point, you have to be able to step back and insulate your personal aspects, protect your family, protect your livelihood, protect your ability to provide for your family, and all those good things. And
if you're considering Snowball, just do it.
Snowball creates done-for-you referral programs for moving companies so you can turn happy customers into new revenue without lifting a finger. And the results speak for themselves.
In less than a year, we've collected over 2,000 referrals.
We generated over $200,000 of revenue that cost about $5,000 to do it.
I believe we have 4 or 5 the very first day.
The companies winning with Snowball are the ones that already care about their customers. We just help turn that into new business through human outreach and customer nurturing.
Snowball is part of the arsenal of tools that I recommend to my clients because it works.
Being found on the second page of Google is literally like having a billboard in the middle of the desert. Your mama ain't gonna see it. No one's gonna see it. You're on the second page of Google, no one's gonna call, no one's gonna book. Here is the deal. If your business is not ranking on the top of Google, that means your competitors are going to be stealing your customers every single day. So at Rotate Digital, we don't play any guessing games. We use data-driven SEO strategies to make sure Google finds you first so that these Google searches turn into your customers, not your competitors' customers. How do we do it? We do it through AI-driven keyword optimization, exclusive blog networks, backlinking strategies, and honestly, the secret stuff, the proprietary lead attribution software. So what do you get as a result? You get not only good marketing, but now you get clarity into what is bringing you more revenue. So if that's something you want to do, you want to make sure your leads find you and not your competition, go ahead and go to rotatedigital.com, schedule a call, and we'll help you take your business to the top of Google.
But what about the situations when especially for the guys that are, trying to start their companies or trying to get things going, they finally, had enough money to actually, get an LLC set up for their business or an S Corp situation. And see, I'm starting to, doing all these podcasts, I'm starting to realize all this U.S. mumbo jumbo. I'm just limited or incorporated. It's pretty easy in Canada. Or self-proprietor. Decals. And so, but for them, you are looking at, here's the cost. Now I just bought a truck. I finally have this. I can put it under my company, and I have my company kind of set up. But then it comes down to, I want a warehouse, or maybe I want to actually lease or finance a brand new truck. And they go, well, you need to personal guarantee this. This is like $150,000 truck. And you're sitting there, handshaking, going, well, what else am I going to do? Like, I need to do it. I need to kind of get it done. What do you say to those that are like, well, yeah, but Patrick, like, my hands are tied. Like, that was the only way for me to grow was to put a personal guarantee on.
And that is quite possible, and it happens all the time. And that's where I recommend that particular obligation be flagged in the client's internal database, however they track their ongoing finances, their exposures, their obligations. So at the end of the day, and everybody does this, from a business perspective, a personal, you have that list of bills, and certain bills are getting paid before the others. And that's one you want. Yeah. The other thing is very important to make sure that there's no hole in the insurance on that. So, there cannot be like, oh, I forgot to add that truck to my insurance. You have a lot of these carriers, especially when you're starting out, I won't use names, but some of the carriers, I'm sure plenty of people know about them. They're big names, but they're not very good in transportation. So you have to be very, very exact about adding a particular truck on for coverage, things like that. Well, if you forget to do that and you have a PG on a truck lease and something goes south, that's a big problem. So to your point, flag that so you know that gets extra attention. So those 2-3 looks at a particular issue, that matter is getting it. Whereas some of the more mundane, everyday things can go down the priority set. But the other thing. All
right, so I'm going to go back to 28-year-old Steven. Right? And 28-year-old Steven didn't have this wonderful family dependent on me, and I didn't have this house. Right, I was renting, and I didn't have much to my name. So, is there a spot where the juice is worth the squeeze on a personal guarantee? Is it lower risk when I was 28-year-old Steven compared to now?
It is. However, you have to remember that the legal world moves at a snail's pace. So, what 28-year-old Steven does can very easily affect 33-year-old Steven, and so on and so forth. And then whatever that event is goes down the line. So. If you 28-year-old Steve, hey, yeah, I want to have a family eventually. I want to be able to provide. I'm a man. I do it the right way. I'm gonna take responsibility, and I'm gonna take care of my family. I don't have the family yet. I don't know when that'll happen, but it's gonna happen. You're best off at that point building it as if you are already there, because it's a lot easier and frankly a lot less expensive to do it right at the beginning. I'm not talking about crazy undertakings, but as Mark said, Get your corporate structure. You can do LLC, S corp. Get that together. Start thinking down the line. Start talking to yourself a decade from now and see what you could do now to make sure that that person is going to be protected. That's a great question, Stephen, because a lot of these guys, they think, I'm single. And believe me, like, you know, that in the neighborhood of Chicago, I have all sorts of buddies who are, you know, I'm in my early 40s. They still live that life. And they're out there doing all sorts of crazy things. Yeah, but someday, you know, you're going to want to take that next step and you want to be prepared.
So what about 38-year-old Stephen who signed, just in theory, that's when I met Patrick, but 38-year-old Stephen had a lot to lose. At what point, what can I lose based on a personal guarantee at that point?
Personal guarantees can be really nasty because they can get to everything you have, inside and out. And the thing is, when you're dealing with a personal guarantee, typically, especially on a truck lease, they have you know, your Penske's, your Riders, they have armies of lawyers. You know, this isn't like a mom and pop shop that they're going to hire a lawyer if they need to. No, these guys are ready to go and they're good at what they do. I've had some dealings with them. They're very good, and that's all they do. You know, so you got to figure if you put a situation where, you know, you sign that PG and it's unchecked, you don't have the bounds, you haven't limited the exposure to the greatest degree that you can. Well, this guy's going to just walk all over it. He's going to use it as an open door, and he's going to get to your personal assets, so on and so forth. Now all of a sudden, your livelihood's truly at risk, and the next thing you're talking to is a BK, a bankruptcy attorney.
And I would look at something like this where there, you know, if I was using this analogy of the 28-year-old Stephen, 38-year-old Stephen, and in this guideline got married, had kids, bought a house, and was building up his business. At the 28-year-old stage, when I'm looking at a personal guarantee, my biggest recommendation is to really understand your risk assessment behind that. Because if someone's coming at me and going, okay, well, you want this $100,000 truck, maybe don't get the $100,000 truck. Maybe do a personal guarantee on $50,000 truck because you don't have the $50K. And now you actually are building yourself a bit of credit. Stay on those payments. Make sure the payments are low enough that you figured out, okay, like I need to make sure that these payments are being taken care of all the time. Maybe not renting the office and the truck and this and that. Maybe you are working out of your house, but you got a really beautiful truck that's wrapped in front of your driveway. You know, start looking at other solutions so that you are not hunkered down with PGs all over the place. Right now, you're just getting slapped in the face and you're going to get super overwhelmed. It usually results into a lot of mistakes that can go down and a lot of mistakes that can happen. And once you get to that 30-year-old Stephen, you're like, you know what? Now I actually own 5-6 trucks. I'm looking at a large warehouse. Well, you know what? If something does slide, if something does happen, usually that PG that you're handing behind it, they're going to go after the trucks. They're going to look at what assets you have. They're seeing the storage vaults. It's never affecting your house. Like I remember when I did a personal guarantee when I purchased Salmons, I looked at the assets I was walking into going, you know what, at the end of the day, this is the amount that I want to make sure that I'm covering from the bank. And if I have to put a personal guarantee and something went sideways, they'll never go after my house because I will have enough assets left to pay off whatever needs to get done, and then start an OnlyFans page. All right. So, I mean, like, you got to do what you got to do. No, it failed miserably, my OnlyFans page. It just did not make it. So I started a podcast instead.
28-year-old Stephen, pre-OnlyFans, where we could just make bukus of money. By the way, Movified version 2, there is a subscription model on OnlyFans. No, but going back to 28-year-old Stephen, I didn't know there was a choice. And these big companies, these commercial, the CBREs, not pointing them out, all these different, Avison Young, those big property management companies, along with Penske and some of the other Penske-like companies, they're going to ask for a personal guarantee on every contract. But what I didn't know, and I learned as 38-year-old Stephen, Patrick says, wait, that's completely negotiable. Don't just accept that. Let's go back at them. right? With okay, we understand you're worried about it, but here's what we're going to offer you. So would you recommend people going to you or their attorney when there is that negotiation point, not just cowering down?
100%. That's a great question, because I can tell you the general landlord model is put everything in the kitchen sink in this proposed lease that ends up being 60 pages and throw it at them and see what they'll agree to. So I mean, typically the process from an attorney, you're redlining back and forth. It's all this nonsense, and you'll be surprised how often they throw things that are just so onerous and ridiculous that if they don't always enforce it, but they could. Insurance requirements, for example. There's, 3 words can cost you 25 G's in insurance premiums very easily.
Yeah, I remember my particular situation. You were like, "We don't need that."
Yeah.
You're adding this much premium, to them for no reason.
When you're looking at, I was going to start losing my train of thought here. The idea of, and we see this, we're talking about it, and we see it a lot, and Patrick, I can only imagine you see it all the time, the guys that have started a business prior to, being in a relationship, but then let's say they get in a relationship.
Oh yeah.
We're going there.
Now they're living with that, partner, and then things kind of go sideways. Is there a sense of common law behind the business that you own, or are you protected in any way? Because, well,
that's an episode on its own, Mark. I think, rather.
Well, we should have saved this one for Valentine's Day. You know what? Talk to the attorney about it. So it really is a state by state analysis. So I mean, you have the majority are equitable distribution, and we're talking in the marriage context. Once that's already done, it gets very, very, very muddy. But there's a couple things that I can tell you is my practical advice and my legal advice often they often come together here. If this is a pre-marriage asset, okay, the way I view this from a biblical standpoint and obviously from a legal standpoint is this is. I'm coming to the marriage with this. I'm providing for you. This is the marital, this is the marital contract where, I'm bringing it to the game. This is important. It's a part of me, essentially. It's what I bring to the table. And communicate that with your future spouse. You want to do it beforehand, because these are not conversations you want to have after the fact. Often it's I don't want to say too late, but it can get very difficult. But get on the same page, because to your point, a lot of people run into that after the fact, like, oh man, I'm 6 months into my marriage and it's not what I thought it is. So I'm going to talk to an attorney how to protect myself. Don't do that. That's think ahead. And
that conversation always blows my mind. That conversation always
think Patrick, right? That's another think Patrick moment.
Right?
Yeah,
exactly. I mean, the way in an ideal world, this wouldn't even be an issue. Everything would have the get married, the family works on it, the kids in there, dispose of it. It's all for the better of the family, but that's just not the reality. I think that open and honest communication with your spouse, who is in every sense they're a partner, and I don't care what anybody says. There's going to be some say, whether that be how many hours you work, or whether that be who's taking the kids to school. All of those kind of things come into play. So. I couldn't give a generality other than communication and planning before you take that step, because I would be willing to bet that nobody watching this podcast is going to say, oh yeah, this guy over here, I met him at the bar. He wants to be my business partner. I'm going to let him into my business. Nobody's going to do that. Well, think about it. It's much closer on the spousal end. Have that conversation.
Do you, so now on the flip side of that, happy family, happy wife, happy life, right? Kids, everything else. I had personal guarantees, but now after talking to my lawyer, or maybe just listening to this podcast, I go, I want to switch things up. I want to have a family trust. I want to have some type of trust in place so that in essence, I'm much more protected. Two-part question. One is, can I go back to the leases or the financing situations that I have a personal guarantee on and go, I got actually a trust in place in my company. Can this be taken off now? And, or what's your recommendation on making sure this gets structured right away as you're growing your family to not have things blow up in your face?
First of all, you bring up a great base. If Christ, as Christ says, you want to build your house on stone, not on sand, right? And and believe it or not, there's a lot of companies out there that don't take that very, very important advice at some point in their growth. So, with that, I think a trust is a wonderful, wonderful, wonderful legal mechanism to create that house on stone. Because a trust, and again, it's state specific to a degree, but conceptually, you're creating a set of rules for your asset. That's all a trust typically is. A set of rules and guidelines most of the time outside of the court's purview. So you have a lot more privacy, you have a lot more self-determination, things like that. Well, so to kind of go to the first part of your question, how you get there, you have something, you're getting married, you want to build your family. You want to get the trust in place, and you want to start to get out of these PGs and some of these more volatile arrangements, if you will. Well, it all starts with a solid trust. You have to have a very solid trust. You have an attorney drafted. The AI ain't going to cut it on this, at least for the time being.
No, it's not. Yeah, for somebody who's gone through the process, AI it'll help. It'll help make you some decisions and think.
Right. Great point. It's that discerning process. Tell me about a trust. How does it work? What is it? And go into the attorney with these questions ahead of time instead of the attorney having to educate you. Well, the trust is going to do this for you. No, you know what you're talking about. But once you have that trust, it's kind of a phase out of these more, we'll call them volatile arrangements. The PGs, or maybe a bad lease where there's a particular exposure maybe. You have them highlighted as things to pay a little more attention to, and you give them that attention, and you can always try to renegotiate them, but nobody's going to just do it without being compelled. So if you've had growth, over the last 3 years, compared to when you signed that PG, well, that's a way to say, hey, bank, guess what? I'm bigger, I'm badder now. This bank wants my business. I like you, but I'm not married to you, so how about you cut that PG off and I'll stay with you and have that conversation. Don't be afraid to be bold. At the end of the day, these people are, a lot of these vendors are not worried about, anything other than their bottom line. So you got to be bold. You got to be your own advocate. So take those things, start to phase them out. And then, if something's, you're stuck, well, have an exit plan. Like, okay, well, this PG's up, 3 years from now. Where am I gonna go after that? Start to build towards that goal. This is kind of getting more complex, but as you do this, sometimes, and you got to do it state-specific legal and tax analysis. But sometimes you have that underlying trust, and that owns one LLC that in turn owns another LLC, and maybe you divvy up your storage operations from your moving operations. Again, that takes a lot of analysis, but conceptually, sometimes that's the answer to minimize or at least mitigate those expenses. Mm-hmm.
Minimize your risk as much as possible, whatever you can do. It's something my dad taught me years and years ago when I first started getting into
And we're in a risky business.
We sure are. Patrick, before we kind of move on, it is time for Dolly Dash. Are you ready? I'm going to hit you with 5 questions. You have 30 seconds to answer them. They can't be long-winded answers. I can't give you long-winded questions. Stephen Reed slaps my hand every time I do. You ready? All right.
Perfect. It's the same ways that the host has the same rules as the guest on this one. It's the same time limit. So both of y'all,
Try to tell an attorney not to be wordy.
If you're burning, we'll let you roll, but keep them under a minute. Try to.
What's the biggest structural mistake movers make?
Going back to the lack of thinking, not having a plan, not having, as we talked about, a trust built upon an LLC or a corp, whatever that makes sense.
What revenue level is where structure becomes serious? Like
$1
million?
$1.
$1.
Literally, $1. Going back to, as soon as you start a business, you want to start it right. Bad habits have a tendency to be long-term policies. Cut them out at the beginning.
Yeah, I see that. What's one asset movers should never hold personally?
Bad reviews. Negative reviews. Never take them personally.
Don't take them personally. That's a great comment.
I like that.
I like it.
I mean, I could go. I've had many a conversation on that end, and we have friends that I've had to bring back on that.
Your Glassdoor reviews, yeah, from people that never started at your company.
Exactly. I applied there, but I didn't like the colored paper.
Exactly.
What's the most dangerous sentence you hear from movers?
Well, I built this policy on AI.
Yeah. I think even the AI creators, I think Sam says a lot, like, don't do financials yet, don't do legal, right? Those are two things to keep off of there.
Is there a way, because there's a lot of boiler templates in place for a lot of things that we need, but could we utilize AI to actually help articulate, to save down on legal costs, to kind of go, hey, Patrick, okay, I need a boiler template for, dealing with new I'm starting a restoration side of division. I want to have some type of legal contract set up on here. And here's kind of like the AI outline of kind of what my gist is about. Can we try and incorporate some of this with your boiler template to help, really tighten this up?
100%. And you know where it is? It's a time saver, and I'm all for that, because it allows a mover to work on the back end to kind of bring themselves up to speed on some of the important issues that they would have to consider, the concepts. Somebody comes into my office and says, hey, I'm an intrastate mover. I can only operate within the state of whatever. I want to start running interstate. Well, if I have to start kind of, walking them through from, okay, you have to get this type of insurance, and then it has to do this, and then you have to have these kind of compliant docs, that's a lot of time. Whereas if, somebody, that same person comes to me and says, okay, I already have my BOC3, I'm set up for insurance with this, I need some tweaks on my interstate BOL. Can you take a look at it and put, what you do? How do I do the tariff? Because I can't find the right answer. The reason I bring that up is AI still doesn't know what an interstate tariff, where that goes, or how to do it. How do I do it? And that conversation just went from 2 billable hours to 1. And I'll tell you, from an attorney's standpoint, or at least from my perspective, I love that. Because now I'm having conversations that are frankly, as nerdy as it is, exciting. We're kind of getting the meat and potatoes. We're getting to the stuff that actually matters and is going to do things for you down the line. So AI has its place. I am a firm believer in that. What it'll do is it'll give the mover the opportunity to educate themselves.
Well, I also think there's a lot of less fluff that's being transcribed, and now you get your bill from your lawyer, and it's 5-6 hours when it really could have just been an hour, and you could have saved yourself a lot more money. Okay, one action someone should.
I had a question real quick, if you don't mind here.
Go, please.
I think it's important as I've gone through the process. Patrick, if we talk a lot about this on our show. All right, so if someone wants to sell their company one day, we talked about trust and setting up LLCs. Does bad structure hurt valuation?
No, it doesn't, as long as it's done right. And this is kind of going back to the mechanism. Generally speaking, of course, you have your trust owns the LLC. Now, if the moving company is the trust, that's a problem. I've seen that maybe once. It's not very common, but at the end of the day, it's got to be layers. So, you bring up a great point, because how many movers go into it like, I want to have a generational moving company. I want, my great-great-great-grandkid to be doing this. It's very rare. So to that end, you want to know, one of the things we do when we take on a client, we ask them, what do you see yourself doing a decade from now? Are you still going to be moving, or are you going to be something else? Are you going to have sold, or are you going to franchise, or are you going to this, whatever, PE? And that's where, you start to consider, building your structure according to that. One of the biggest things that, PE is going to look at are the financials, obviously. They're going to look at compliance. So the general rule, what I've always gone by, are 3 years of audited financials. That gets pricey, so you want to make sure your processes are set up beforehand because those guys ain't cheap. Also, find a good guy. The fluff. Some of these bigger name firms aren't going to add that much value just because of the name. But structurally speaking, you just want to make sure that you are compliant, that entity, that LLC or that corp, is completely separate from your personal assets, from your trust, and it functions on its own from a legal and practical end. And you should be in good shape.
Love it.
I got another banger here. So, no trust versus trust. If a moving company owner dies tomorrow, God forbid, what happens operationally with no trust versus trust?
Well, how do you guys like court? Well, because typically speaking, what happens is you'd be probating a non-trust situation, and people say, "Oh, I have a will. It's good." Now, because wills are only effective once they hit probate, once the court backs that power, so to speak. So trust is that, in theory, if it's done well and done right, you're avoiding probate. And it's going to spell out everything, that needs to be done afterwards. God forbid so-and-so passes away. Okay, well, he's got kids and, they're minors. So it goes, by virtue of the trust, it goes by this person's overseeing it, so on and so forth. But that's a great question.
Payroll, right? Like somebody's assigned to payroll where it's a big...
Yep.
Is somebody going to grab it? Access from your spouse to the company, right? During probate, there could be a good gray area of your spouse getting a hold of contacts if somebody at your company wants to block that, right?
Oh, it's going to get ugly. Exactly. Because you figure probate, you're dealing with a judge that, despite best efforts, they don't understand moving. Moving is unlike any industry out there. I mean, it's I love it because it's always interesting. It's never boring. But you're going to put this in front of a judge. I literally had a judge maybe a year and a half ago tell me at a case, he's like, you know what? I don't want to give you this ruling because I don't like moving companies. I don't know what kind of precedent that was, but you're putting your business, your life's work, in the hands of somebody who might have a personal vendetta or just doesn't know what you do. Take the discretion out of it. Put it as you want it to be. And again, goes back to the think, before you hit your brother with a baseball bat and all that. And so.
Stephen, your two questions turned into very long answers, but that's okay. This Dolly Dash was brought to you by BHC Insurance, trusted since 1915. Thank you, Stephen. But to make sure you ask Stephen or myself about it, because you need to call Trey Scallion at 501-278-0105 or visit them at bhca.com. Why?
I forgot we were in the Dolly Dash, transparently. Completely forgot we were in the Dolly Dash.
Hiring practices, doc compliance. Do you know, just like as you'd want to phone your lawyer with questions, do you have someone in your pocket to help pull those levers that you need to make sure that you're not getting ripped off when it comes down to insurance renewals? So make sure that that you are getting this done. How can you get this done? Well, you can do the Movified strategy for your company. So call Trey today and get it done. Again, bhca.com. Awesome. Thanks, Patrick. What a guy. You guys are something else. Okay. So now, Stephen was chatting about like exit strategies with you, Patrick, and what not to kind of, bad structure, how is it hurting their values and everything else. I died.
I hope you didn't.
The next day, I try to set up my business for success. I have a trust in my company. I felt like I've done it all. But you know what? Unfortunately, I had a heart attack. I passed away. I did not have a will in place. The company is set up where, my LLC, my holding company, owns the company. Here's my funnels, or I have the trust above it all, blah, 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 blah. My wife's not involved in the business. She has no idea, except that she probably wants to just go in and fire everybody because she's like, finally, after all of the crying, I don't have to hear about moving anymore. And yeah, that's right. That's right. What am I trying to make sure that has to get done? I mean, I'm thinking payroll. I'm thinking spouse access. I'm thinking who has authority, who has control, how is this all? How can I be preventative now to make sure that this is taken care of? Because you never know what happens.
And that's a great question. So you have the trust, and this is where, a trust is, like I say, it's a set of rules, but what good is that if you're not, you don't have somebody with the either the knowledge or the capability of following those rules as you would want. Here's what I would strongly recommend is you have to bring somebody that you trust, absolutely trust, or possibly even two people, although that could get dicey depending on how well they get along. But you want to bring them in the know. And it doesn't have to be anything crazy like going through, okay, this is my SOP on dispute resolution when I have a problematic customer. But you have to give them the high level. Like, okay, my ops guy is this person. He knows what's going on. My dispatch company or my dispatch department is this person. They're good there. You got to get somebody who's you trust, that's going to have the initiative, the care for your business and for your family and your legacy, that they're going to be able to step in, not necessarily on a 60-hour day, work week, but they're going to step in and they're going to dedicate some resources to it. And one of the things, and I'll kind of just put this out there and let it play out, but what I've seen is some of the bigger player moving companies is they take colleagues, trusted colleagues, and they actually mention them in their trusts. So, and geographically, you can do that. You can have, okay, I'm passed away. My wife is, doesn't understand the business. In the trust, you put in a particular person who has a role as to the moving company itself. Somebody who is a storied, knows what they're doing. They get the game, and it could be cross country. It doesn't matter. They're still going to know enough about what you do to make it keep rolling. So. 100%, because you just want to, at the very least, keep the status quo.
And Mark's signing up for all this. Mark wants to be in your trust, guys.
yeah, just throw my name down on there, no problem. All those guys have got so much money, and they're like, oh yes, we've donated all to this foundation. There's a Mark and Stephen Reed Movified Foundation too. That if you want to put her name down, we'll build you a banner ad. Don't worry.
I'll talk about me a little bit and one of our buddies that used to be on the show a little bit, but he knows what's going to happen if something happens. He's going to get compensated for it well, right? And that's already agreed to, so my wife doesn't have to deal with that in a lot of ways. And it's a weird place to put your head, as I told Patrick, if that happens, right? But it's already, I know that my business is not going to go backwards while my wife makes a decision personally. I'll be one of the guys, maybe even the example you were talking about there.
Maybe you're one of them. I don't know. Yeah. But and that's the right move, because you have somebody, and compensation is fair in that. They should be. You're paying somebody for their expertise, and people say, you have to think you get what you pay for often. You don't want Aunt Edna who was a, I don't know, whatever, a beautician. You don't want her at the realm, despite your love and fondness for her. Because lo and behold, next month you're going to start, having chairs in there and people getting perms and all, whatever the cool kids do nowadays. But I don't, but the other thing too is keep your trust updated. Do a review every few years. Make sure that the plan that you put in place still is a good plan. That those relationships, good relationships, and everything still makes sense.
But you also just every couple of years when you're following up on this, you should probably. I always just think have a folder in your desk that's and just label it what if. And just know that there's a folder in there that says, hey, pull this out if something happens. And there's all your kind of your passwords. There's this, there's that. A signed letter that just says, hey, listen, I give authority to my office manager, my GM to kind of lead way. See, there you go. Yeah. Exactly, right? Just so you kind of have everything ready to go, I think is definitely an idea. Without getting into personal details, what was the primary goal for yourself when you were trying to get Steven set up?
Honestly, protect them. Protect them because, I've always admired what Steven has built and continues to build. And, there's, from the attorney's perspective, like sometimes we get so nutty in terms of the protection aspect, like that we're really, oh, you can't try to do that new idea. You can't try to do that idea. Steven was excellent in that he would take the advice on the risk and he would analyze it and he could translate that to a product that makes sense and works and succeeds. So to that end, from Steven's, my job as the attorney is not to dictate. That's the worst thing in the world because you could stifle creativity. You could stifle, some of the, the genius that comes out of it. I've seen, I won't go into details, but there's some things I'm awestruck at, in a very good way. Our job is to protect based on the client's wishes. If there's a concern, you voice that, but you don't dictate. And that's from working with Steven, that's exactly what we did. We talked about it and, we had a very good local firm come to put the Tennessee flavor on it, which I love Memphis barbecue. It's the best barbecue in the world. But put that on. Oh man. Don't get me started, man. But you have to be able to work with your client and from the business owner's perspective, you have to have an attorney and professionals generally, whether it be insurance or finances, that are going to support your vision. It's not the attorney's vision. It's not the other professional's vision. It's the client's vision. So from our perspective, I just looked at Steven. I knew Steven well already, so that made it easier to say, okay, Steven, you want to do this, this, and this? Okay, well, Patrick, what if we do it this way? You know what, Steven, that's a great idea. Let's do that. And that interplay. Talk it out. Again, thinking, and then put it to practice.
We recently hired Ready Rolls to help us with hiring some offshore help, some DAs, and they've done an amazing job. They found the perfect candidate for our company. Not only that, they helped answer the questions that we had about the process. Initially, hiring a BA can be a bit intimidating, but they answered all the questions. It's been an amazing experience. Our BA has been a huge part of our success thus far. We're actually in the process of hiring a few more right now. Definitely see them as being a key part of our growth and reaching our goals in 2025. And another game changer for our company. I'm confident to be a game changer.
Visit ReadyRolls.com. There is now a better way to scale.
Well, I love it. I love it. Before we kind of wrap it up, my last question on here is, you mentioned, a business can work when it's like at $1. Like you should have things structured, you should have things in place, everything else. Is there anybody that really doesn't need to worry about this that we talked about? Like, is there, especially when it comes down to trust, especially when it comes down to thinking exit strategies and having things do you ever say look, man, you got one truck, you're doing 100,000 business, don't even fucking worry about it kind of thing?
Yeah. Great question. And this is where I would say realism, you have to be a realist at the same time. Because, from the $1 perspective, you could be told, you're going to do a trust and you're going to have this insurance and we're going to structure it this. Then we're going to do a land trust. At the end of the day, you gotta be reasonable with your resources. You have to allocate them well. LLCs are extremely easy. And if you do them right with the knowledge, they're very strong. It's a very solid concept. So invest depending on the state, different filing fees, but to get it up and running, invest the $500 to a G to get an LLC at the very minimum. Obviously, for compliance, you have to have insurance and all that kind of stuff. But if you're going to do nothing else, at least do that. And then down the line, if you can't afford it, okay, you do the trust down the line. It's a relatively easy process most of the time. Taking an LLC in your name and actually putting it into a trust is generally not that bad. But the LLC is absolutely vital. So from the realist perspective, I would say there's nobody that should just say, I don't have to worry about it. However, there are some very simple mechanisms by which you can start to build.
I love it. It's
one thing I always put out.
You know, the trust. Ask yourself, like, you know, see what your risk is, and don't ever do the shoulder shrug, being like, meh, will never happen to me. Won't happen to this guy. Listen, this full wrap.
Blue collar, right? That are in the moving industry, very blue collar. And the word trust, we're like, what is that? That's some kind of polished word that somebody that comes from money gets and all this stuff. So thank you a lot, Patrick, for sharing.
Yeah,
all this
I
with us and
appreciate
breaking
this was a lot of fun segment to kind of touch on that. You know, it brings up, we think about it. We have these kind of conversations, you know, between each other in our groups. But a lot of times, you know, this is what we love doing the show, is if Patrick gets thrown on a webinar or some type of other, you know, podcast, they're usually hunting down all these other questions. We've already done it. So like, I really kind of enjoyed this podcast episode, because these are a lot of like those in-between questions where like, like this does happen to us. Look, this full wrap of our episode is brought to you by ReadyRolls.com. Ready Rolls helps growing operators delegate the right work to train executive assistants. You listen to it every week here, and every entrepreneur expert recommends this. So if you haven't gotten your VA, your virtual assistant yet, I don't know what you're waiting for. Like, fucking, like, you're crazy. Like, type it out. Like, I go to network events all the time. I'm like, you don't have a VA? You don't have 8 VAs? Like, what's wrong with you? If you're actually, this wrap up gets brought. I was in a conference, I was in a Zoom meeting, and it got brought up for the fact that I said, why do you not have a VA handling this? And it was one of those situations where you hear almost every excuse in the book of, well, there's this and there's this and this. And I said, yeah, but everything you're naming out is exactly why you need a VA to take that off your plate and free more of your time. So get on it. If you're scaling and still doing everything yourself and feeling the burnout, that's where Ready Rolls comes in. So visit ReadyRolls.com to learn more. Yeah. Patrick, someone's listening to this, realizes, holy shit, I need someone to review my structure. I am doing a lot of this wrong, and I love this guy with the Chicago accent. How do they know they need a consult? Like, is there like a way that they can reach out to you? We'll have your link.
So you mentioned Movified. I'll give them a free 30-minute consult, which we normally charge for. But that, because I know they're already coming in. They're coming in. You're talking top tier. So, and that makes it that much more more productive from my end. Pat, easiest is you could go email me. I'm very personal, with my service. We have a small team, but a mighty team, intentionally so, because we take it very serious. Our team is on it. Email me. We can set it up. Patrick, Patrick @Mayerbock Law, MAYERBOCK LAW.com. Or you can give our wonderful Savannah a call at 312-866-9338, and we'll set up a consult and just
shout out Savannah. Poor you. All the work that Patrick probably makes you get done. Steven, you got some quick action items here?
Savannah is on Instagram for me, and Savannah and Gina talk. So yeah. Candidly, I don't. I probably should.
What? We'll have it on there. Yeah, because I think you recently accepted my invite finally after like a year. So I think it probably came up.
Well, that goes without saying.
Or you found Movified or something. You started following. I remember that. It was like a month or so ago. All right, good. All right, perfect.
You got it.
And don't forget my challenge this week, right? If you see something, do it privately and celebrate publicly.
And I'm ordering it tonight because Gina with the girls will take that. I'm not even joking. This will become a daily Mayerbock thing. Gina's very good. She does, we do a hybrid school thing, so Gina teaches the kids a lot on top of managing the office, and managing me, which is, no light feet. But that'll become like a daily read for my 10-year-old, my 6-year-old, and my 3-year-old.
I love that.
So.
I love it. Thank you.
The Mayerbock moving machine he's forming over there.
That's right.
Yeah.
Always a pleasure. Thank you so much, Patrick. For all of those, thank you for watching, listening. Please make sure you subscribe, like, comment. We love to hear your feedback. Let us know what you thought of the episode. Maybe some other questions that you might have for Patrick for future episodes. We'd love to hear it as well, too. Or we can get that privately. And then go get your 30-minute consult. Come on. Shout it out. Be prepared. No fluff. Be ready. Be present, and get your shit together.
Yeah, and that's
Wednesday.
if you don't have anything, go ahead and do that consult so you have a relationship with Patrick.
Exactly.
So when something does happen, he knows about you and your business, and he's ready to go.
Totally. Stay.
Tell them Movified. Mention Movified. That'll flag us that we know.
Stay Movified, everybody. See you later.